We are about to begin our weekend celebrating the greatest country in the history of history. And I don't believe there was one before history was written that was greater than ours is today. And I believe ours will remain the greatest, despite the many challenges of the virus, of political division, and of a dishonest news media. And I say this with a heavy heart. I've been attacked this morning on Twitter by some people that I'm very courteous with, people like John Harwood and Matthew Dowd and Ron Fournier, because I tweeted the president was, I quoted Robert O'Brien, the president was not briefed because at the time of these allegations, they were uncorroborated, Mr. O'Brien said. And as a result, the president's career CIA briefer decided not to brief him. From the New York Times this AM, as paper catches up with a real story, a non-story. Now, their attacks are routine, and they're unfortunate. I am constrained, and I have to kind of give context to new listeners. I'm a believing Christian, and if you are a believing Christian, you are constrained in how you respond to your critics. And I know every believing Christian knows that. You may not. It's a gospel injunction. Call someone a fool. You can't. I don't think any of these three men are foolish, by the way, are fools. You are obliged to be courteous. You are obliged to carry a private dispute privately to an individual with whom you have a dispute. But when you're in the media and you're attacked like I am by these three individuals and many others for reporting the facts, it calls to mind and it sets in relief the problem we have in America today, which is the media is broken. Deeply, deeply broken. Trump derangement syndrome has affected these three individuals deeply. Ron Fournier, who I really like, John Harwood, with whom I have always been courteous, and Matt Dowd, with whom I enjoyed a few occasions back before when I was a free agent. I would spend time on ABC this week with George Stephanopoulos and Matt Dowd in Iowa and other places in the 2016 cycle. But because I actually have sources in the White House, very good sources, I actually talk to people in the Oval Office. I talk to people in the National Security Council apparatus. I talk to the Secretary of State. I talk to the Secretary of Defense. I talk to senators and congressmen. I actually am the best source journalist in Washington, D.C. right now today. Maybe Sean Hannity is better because he'll talk to the president more often than I do. But I'm in the top three in terms of actual honest-to-God executive branch sources and Republican senator sources and a few Democrats. So I actually know this story up and down. And I get calls. I got two in the last 3 days on two stories from my NBC News colleagues. I'm happy to tell them what I know. I get asked by Robert Costa, what do you think of the Clarence Thomas story? I tell him that's not happening. Clarence isn't going to retire, in my opinion. The better gossip, and it's all gossip, it's uncorroborated, is that Sam Alito might retire. I don't know Justice Alito. I've never even met him. We worked at the Justice Department at the same time when I was a young special assistant to two attorney generals, but I don't know him. I just repeated the gossip. And I'm getting worked by people who want to succeed Alito, and that's fine. But I've talked to people in the White House about other justices, but I don't know anything. And I'll tell you when I don't know anything. But I know this story. I know that the Russia bounty story was not briefed to the president because the CIA senior briefer did not believe it was worthy and trustworthy and did not want to give to the president bad intel. All right, that's the story. The New York Times screwed it up again. But what is more amazing is that they cannot bring themselves to mea culpa. And what Jim Talent just told me, what has the media gotten right about Russia in the last 3 years is so profound. They blew the Steele dossier. They blew the Comey story. They blew the McCabe story. They are unaware of often the Russian mercenary attack on American forces in Syria in February of 2018, which turned into a turkey shoot for the Russian mercs who are all dead. They forget that the Crimea was absorbed under President Obama. They forget we have the toughest Russia sanctions in place. They don't want to believe the facts because they hate Donald Trump. They have Trump derangement syndrome. If that is a sin, I am sorry. But they have lost their collective minds. Moreover, they are cowards. Not Ron and Matt. I did not invite them on. John Harwood is a coward. I invited him on at 6:33. I invited him on now. I invited him via his Twitter feed and by direct message with the studio line. And he would not come on. Why? because John Harwood doesn't have, in my opinion, he could prove me wrong, a single source, not one. I'll bet you he has never talked to the National Security Advisor, the Secretary of State, the President, on or off the record in the last 3 years. That's my bet. My bet is he can ask a question occasionally from the White House press room and get a response, but he has never spoken to them off the record in private and got not once. Now, I get a lot of people around town who ask me to help them make contact with the West Wing. And I always help them because I try and help everyone get the facts right. But I want you to know the news media is broken. It isn't the news. It's infotainment. It is absolutely playing to the 1% that they want to play to. Now, I got 6 million people listening to me every week. That is 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times the average morning show out there. Not Fox and Friends. They do about half my business. And the reason is they get the news. I'll give you the news. Then I will tell you what I think about the news. And I will interview people who make the news. And I will play you the key clip